French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a message that may reshape the international approach to Iran's nuclear ambitions. His words came in an interview with Israeli Channel 12 News, conducted by anchor Yonit Levi, and quickly echoed across European capitals, Jerusalem and Washington. Macron did not mince his words. Speaking in English, he declared, "The latest news we had from the Iranians are not serious. France has always been a very demanding and clear and consistent player on the Iranian issue, and I think this is very important for your country and your people." This blunt assessment highlighted France's growing frustration with Tehran's failure to provide credible commitments. For Israel, the setting of the interview was no accident. By addressing an Israeli audience directly, Macron sent a message of solidarity at a time when the Middle East remains deeply unsettled by Iran's nuclear ambitions and its wider regional influence. The French president expanded his remarks, leaving no doubt about Europe's intentions. "We never underestimated the risk of the nuclear bomb in Iran, but as well on ballistic capacities and regional destabilisation coming from Iran, as they are unclear and they don't provide any clear commitment on that. Yes, this is a European position, and we've worked with our British and German colleagues. We will put the snapbacks, and it will be followed by all those, obviously, who endorse this decision." With that statement, Macron confirmed what many in diplomatic circles had been whispering for weeks. Europe is preparing to reinstate sanctions on Tehran, known as the snapback mechanism. This move would effectively reimpose the sweeping international restrictions that once crippled Iran's economy, particularly in banking, energy and trade. To understand the weight of Macron's comments, one must recall the history of the nuclear deal. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, signed in 2015, was meant to freeze Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons in exchange for sanctions relief. But the deal began to unravel after the United States, under President Donald Trump, withdrew in 2018, accusing Tehran of cheating and destabilising the region. Since then, Iran has ramped up uranium enrichment, expanding its centrifuge capacity and shortening the so-called breakout time needed to produce bomb-grade material. European powers, France, Germany and Britain, have struggled to keep the agreement alive. Their diplomats argued for dialogue, attempted to balance pressure with incentives, and urged Tehran to return to compliance. Yet over time, frustration grew. Iran's evasiveness on nuclear inspections, its missile tests, and its ties to militant groups in Lebanon, Yemen and Iraq hardened European attitudes. Macron's remarks mark the clearest signal yet that patience has run out. For Israel, Macron's words bring reassurance. Jerusalem has long warned that Iran poses an existential threat with its nuclear and ballistic programs combined with incendiary rhetoric against the Jewish state. By giving the interview to Channel 12, Macron demonstrated not just European resolve, but also a willingness to speak directly to the Israeli public. For Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, that solidarity is crucial, especially as debates rage over military options versus diplomatic containment. Yet beyond Israel, the impact of sanctions will reverberate most inside Iran itself. Ordinary Iranians have long borne the brunt of economic restrictions. Sanctions squeeze the country's oil exports, deprive the state of revenue and cause inflation to spiral. Prices of food, fuel and medicine soar. Families struggle to make ends meet. While governments frame sanctions as tools of accountability, human rights organisations argue they often punish civilians more than leaders. The European snapback decision thus carries both political and moral weight. It signals resolve against nuclear proliferation, but also risks deepening the suffering of ordinary people. Macron, however, emphasised that the responsibility lies squarely with Tehran. His message was that Europe has given Iran time and opportunities, but the lack of credible commitments on both nuclear and regional issues leaves no other option. Observers also note that Macron's use of the word snapbacks was strikingly definitive. It suggested not a theoretical possibility, but an imminent step. In diplomatic terms, this is significant. Once invoked, snapback sanctions are difficult to reverse, creating a near-total isolation of Iran from global finance and trade. The timing is equally telling. Macron spoke just days before the United Nations General Assembly convenes in New York, where Iran's nuclear program is expected to dominate discussions. By speaking out now, the French leader is setting the stage for Europe to present a united front alongside Britain and Germany, and potentially urging the United States to follow suit. For Washington, the issue remains delicate. President Trump, now in his second term, has long championed maximum pressure on Iran, but he has also signalled occasional openness to renegotiating a broader deal. Macron's remarks align France firmly with a harder line, leaving Washington less room to manoeuvre if it seeks compromise. Beyond the nuclear file, Macron also highlighted Iran's role in regional destabilisation. His warning about ballistic capacities was a reminder that Tehran's missile arsenal poses a direct threat not just to Israel, but to Gulf states and NATO's southeastern flank. Furthermore, Iran's support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen and militias in Iraq continues to destabilise fragile states, creating ripple effects that touch European security through refugee flows, terrorism risks and energy instability. The French president's decision to speak with such clarity reflects his broader vision of France as a guardian of international order. In recent years, Macron has sought to position himself as Europe's leading statesman, from Ukraine to climate policy. On Iran, he now projects France as both a mediator and an enforcer, willing to negotiate but equally willing to impose consequences. Reinstating sanctions is not without risks. Analysts warn that Iran may respond by accelerating enrichment, limiting cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, or deepening its strategic ties with Russia and China. Such moves could fragment the international community further, making enforcement of sanctions uneven. Yet Macron's gamble is that a united European stance will strengthen pressure and isolate Tehran diplomatically. Inside Iran, reactions are likely to be defiant. Officials will frame the move as evidence of Western hostility, rallying nationalist sentiment. But beneath the rhetoric lies economic vulnerability. Iran's oil revenues have plummeted, its currency has collapsed, and its young population faces chronic unemployment. For many, the promise of relief through diplomacy has given way to frustration and despair. In Israel, meanwhile, Macron's words will be welcomed as validation of long-standing warnings. Security officials see in France's position a recognition that the Iranian threat is not hypothetical but immediate. With Europe joining the call for renewed sanctions, Israel's argument for global action appears vindicated. Ultimately, Macron's announcement is more than a policy shift. It is a signal that Europe is no longer willing to play for time. After years of careful diplomacy, sanctions are set to return. For Iran, that means renewed economic isolation. For Israel, it means reassurance. For Europe, it means taking a stand on one of the world's most volatile security challenges. On this September evening in Paris, the message from Emmanuel Macron was unambiguous. Iran's behaviour has crossed a line. The consequences will be felt not just in Tehran, but across the Middle East and far beyond.